everyone. We are live. What is up, swimmers and swammers? Welcome back to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I am your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, joined by the swim scribe himself, David Clossy from St. Cloud, Minnesota. David, how's it going, man?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. It's nothing quite like being able to watch swimming happening at an elite international level. It feels like we picked up right where we left off from the summer. I love being able to watch the World Cup. I know a lot of people were in the US were a little bit like, oh man, that's kind of early, for the start time. It was perfect for me. I felt kind of like a jerk for how happy I was about the time because I'm in the central time zone. So it started right at 5:30.
Okay.
That is when I start work. And I normally have about an hour and a half where I'm just alone working on stuff. And I'm normally watching or listening to something anyways. Just propped up my phone and was just like locked into swimming because while I'm doing some somewhat tedious stuff, and it was absolute perfect timing for me.
Beautiful. That's what you want to hear. That's amazing. Yeah, I took the last 2 weeks off, so I watched none of the swimming this past weekend, but I got back today. I didn't look at SwimSwam once. Got back today and was like, holy moly. This we will have so much to talk about today. We had 2 world records. We had a handful of American records, European records, Asian records.
So many records.
So many good swims. So as you said, it's like we didn't even miss a beat from the swimming that was happening this summer at the Olympics. And then people just transitioned right into short course season, and bam, pang, wow, we are in it. So we are just going to be geeking out about this past weekend today. Stay tuned. Later this week, we're going to do a whole episode just about the NCAA, about college swimming, about the landscape of college swimming right now. We have a ton to talk about there. And there's been some extremely fast yard swims. But on today's episode, we are talking short course meters. We are talking Virginia-Florida Dual Meet. And what we are starting with right now is the first stop of the 2024 World Cup in Shanghai. I'm going to get into some specific questions about your favorite swims and what surprised you the most, but just general thoughts on this first of 3 World Cup stops in Shanghai. We saw a lot of great athletes show up and show out for it. What did you think overall, David, as you were watching at 5:30 a.m.?
I thought it was great. I really liked the this is maybe slightly less to do with the actual action taking place in the pool, but just kind of where my head goes to all the time when I'm watching swimming, is I really liked the pace of the broadcast, and how just with it's a very quick pace meet. And so there's always there, since there's not medal ceremonies and stuff like that. And since it's an in-season meet, so they're not necessarily as much, because I feel like a lot of the pace of an world championships or Olympic games is, you need to have those medal ceremony moments. And I think also part of it is giving the athletes some more time when they're doing a double, compared to no one cares about it when it's an instant. It's like, all right, go swim 100, cool down. All right, Kate, we'll see you in 10 minutes for your second race, as like
Right.
Kate Douglas and Regan Smith were doing some stupid doubles. And I was just thinking about it from the aspect of, if I wasn't someone who was always going to watch this or pay attention to the results, someone who's in that side of swimming, someone who's like, oh, I did enjoy the Olympics. Okay, what's this like World Cup thing? I think it'd be pretty engaging to watch, because there's never a moment where you're not either watching athletes walk out and seeing who's in the race, and maybe, the commentators are giving some kind of color, watching them swim, or doing an interview talking about the swim. And I like that they, consistently had all 3 of the top finishers up there. They're kind of giving like a running, very briefly, especially on like the 3rd day, about like the points, and when Marchand officially cinched the win for the first stop, talk about how I was after the 200 breast because he happened to swim. It's like, okay, with that, mathematically you're gonna end up winning this. how you feel about that, having the Chinese athletes give them, they're giving them chances to address the crowd and stuff too, which I thought was, good. Let them have their moment in front of a home crowd and that Olympic glow as well. And so that was something from an outside of the pool's perspective that really stood out. Otherwise, it was just, really cool kind of seeing where everyone's at in terms of, first time I've seen Marchand ever look tired in a race. So, oh yeah, I forgot it's in season. We just watched him in Paris and watching him like breathe really heavy after a 400 IM, which is crazy that that's news. Like, man breathing heavy after a 400 IM.
After a long, hard race.
Yeah, right. But just little things like that, and kind of seeing, even things like some swimmers who are maybe newer on the international stage we don't see as much in season. Like are they more of a fast all the time swimmer? Are they more of a big taper swimmer and things like that? And just kind of getting back into the swing of things and watching, athletes take on crazy doubles is always fun to watch. And it was just a lot of explosive, high energy swimming, which is what you expect from the World Cup.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I want to talk about is an outside the pool thing that I found really interesting, and I didn't even realize this last year. But as I was reading, so how they do the scoring for World Cup, which determines how much prize money you end up winning. You don't just win. It used to be you win an event, you get a check, right? And then I think they had some sort of scoring system, but it was just based on how much you won. And so athletes like Chad Leclos or Katinka Hozu, who were mainstays on the World Cup circuit,
Yes.
a decade ago, would just swim a bunch of events, use their incredible underwaters and endurance, in Katinka's case, to just win and dominate a bunch of events, and then they would end up winning. And so how it works now is no matter how many events you swim over the 3-day meet, your top 3 events get scored, and that's it. And so right now, like Leon Marchand is in the lead because he won the 3 IM events. And again, it's based on like a scoring with the FINA point system, and it kind of gets mathematical. I don't really care to explain it, but it's like this whole system where they only take your top 3 events. How do you feel about that? Because don't really love that system.
I think it's interesting I like that they're trying to equalize it, that there's maybe, I feel like it'd be worth maybe going out to 4 instead of 3, because I think
Yeah.
3 is too easy for someone who is like a single stroke specialist, because you have 50, 100, 200 of any
Mhm.
stroke.
Mhm.
Because stroke 50s are part of the lineup, or the 100 IM in
Yeah.
Leon's case. I think if you went out to 4, it would give those versatile swimmers something to, like that extra trick that they can pull out and be like, hey, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And I think that would maybe make the versatility aspect of it a little more interesting, and make it worth seeing some athletes, if they are trying to maximize their points and maximize their money at the end of the 3 stops. Maybe rather than just having them pick and choose, like, I just want my top 3 just so that way I can make sure I'm as fresh as possible or whatever.
Mhm.
But I do like that they're trying to equalize it. You can't just be, well, I swam 8 events and so I'm gonna win by default for, just having more swims, and I'm so good at underwater kicking that I can make a final on each one. So I like that. I do wish, since us talking about the pace and the broadcast and
Mhm.
stuff like that, I wish they at least spent a minute to explain that a little bit more, because they were tossing out hints at, like they're mentioning the top 3 being scored. I wish they maybe
Yeah.
spent a little more time, like, because you see the whole parade of like, here's the officials and stuff like that, because it's like you're, just as soon as the meet starts, everything is happening in the camera as well as on deck. And just throw up a graphic that's like the chart for the FINA points, to explain that, like, this is half of the scoring, and then show the other chart for, the top placing. And just so that way, even if that's something, the FINA point scoring is never going to translate exactly, like you're going to understand what's happening as soon
Yeah.
as you see it, because you need to like know what the time standards have, sure, but at least to explain it, so that way you have an understanding that the quality of the swim matters, and so
Mhm.
does the placing of the swim. And I think that is the part that intrigues me the most about the scoring system, because I like that it is kind of, especially in, some maybe longer, more tactical races, is it worth it for me to push this 400 IM once I have the win locked up to, if I don't think I'm going to be in that higher echelon, if it's like close towards the end of the series, or do I want to back off because I have a double for my third event coming up? And I think any kind of like scoring system and stuff like that, if you're forcing athletes to make decisions like that, and like more tactical decisions, I think that is always a good sign, because it makes it more dynamic, or at least the potential for it to be more dynamic. It could very well end up that it's not, because some swimmers might just end up running away with it after 2 stops.
And I agree with that. If you're making swimmers move in a tactical way, it's always fun and entertaining for the audience who's observing. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or wherever, I believe this is how not FINA, World Aquatics Aqua Points works, is a world record is 1,000 points, and then for each 100th you're off of that, it's minus 1 point.
That sounds right.
And so again, they take your top 3 events, they take the points of them, and I think they divide it by 10. So
yeah, it's I actually have the SwimSwam article that has it buried in there pulled up, because I was looking at it for, I'm like, let me make sure I understand how it works. And so and it specifies starting from, like, the first one that gives us 990. So if it it's like within, it's not like it rounds up or rounds down. It's just like as soon as you for like the ones place on there, as soon as you cross that threshold. So if you're at 989, you don't get 9.9 points, you get 9.8. You need to bump up into that threshold.
So
and I think no one's really going to look at a swim and be like, that looks like a 970.
Right. And so I'm fine with the scoring system. I just don't love that they're incentivizing athletes to focus in on specific events, or like, if this was a 7-stop series, if there were like 7 meets like the World Cup used to be, I would be a lot more okay with them being like, okay, your top 3 events from each meet, because again, that rewards consistency, and like a stroke specialist or a sprint specialist, or maybe even a distance specialist, could hone in on 2 or 3 events and swim them really well over the course of the entire series, and then be rewarded for that. Even if, if someone was swimming a ton of events, I think they would really earn it if they did that over the course of 7 meets,
That's fair.
But because it's only 3 meets, I think you should be incentivized to like be like, hey, I want to swim 5 events every meet, or 6 events, like 2 events a day, and I'm going to do it all 3 meets. And if I place top 3 in all of them, then I should win. Like I think in a format that this small, you should be incentivized to do crazy things like that, because that, if you can do it and have success in all of them, like, I think that should be rewarded. So
That
I don't
is a
love
very
it for
good
this,
point.
but
I also wonder, because you mentioned that, Chad Leclos and Katika Hosu they benefited the most in the past from not having a cap on that. I wonder if this is a reaction specifically to that. And I'm starting to think now, who would be the problem if they didn't have a cap? Because there wasn't that many like high entry swimmers, and the ones that I would think might be are leading the series.
are already at the top. And like,
Marchand, Kate
that's a good
Douglas.
point.
Oh, who's winning each one right now? Marchand and Kate Douglas.
Yeah, like Reagan Smith is another one, and
Who's
she's
second?
right. Like, she's like 0.1 points behind
Yep.
Kate Douglas. So I think that it's happening anyway, but I think athletes may operate a little bit differently if you were incentivized to just swim more events. I think we might see Leon Marchand swim more events, or maybe we might see Kate Douglas swim more events, and like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Right. But
I want to see him swim every event in a row.
exactly. It's like, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm stoked to see Leon Marchand competing at the World Cup, swimming short course meters, being a professional, like this is awesome. But like he swam his 3 best events. It's like I know I'm being a greedy fan here, but it's like I want to see him do the 200 freestyle or like the 100 back, like that's like the really exciting things when he swims his like 7th best event and is still really, really good at it.
What if there was some kind of, this would be far too complex, actually, realistic and like silly. But what if there was some kind of point bonus for the first time you swim an event? So you'd be incentivized to do like a
See,
different
that would be
event
awesome.
each time. So it's like, yeah, like you can't, if you swim the same event, it's out, there's like some percentage scale where you start like losing your aqua points
Mhm.
aspect of it. So you want to rotate your events out, because you hit 3, then it's like, oh, you actually only earn 90% of what you would have got, or some. Again, that would be ridiculous, and I would make everyone mad about trying to figure out the scoring, and whatever
Right.
SwimSwam writers need to write up that article would just
M
not have a fun time. But we'd see more versatile swimmers.
Yeah, like maybe like a 5-point bonus, right? For like a first time event. And like so maybe something simple like that. So where it's like, okay, yeah, I'll do the 100 back or whatever. Or like, first time that series, something like that. It'd be fun. But oh well, that's okay. Let's let's I was just curious about that format because it is newer and it's different. It's certainly different. But let's talk about the swimming we saw. A lot of great swims. For you personally, what was the best swim that you saw? I mean, obviously there was a world record, but did you think that was the best swim of the meet? Is Noe Ponti's 21.6?
I do think that was the best, because yeah, it was a world record, but
Mhm.
also because he called his shot before in a DM with Duncan Scott. That raised it at a couple points. And then the fact that he showed, I'm sure he would have liked to have been a touch faster, but he showed that it's repeatable, because he went only 1/100 slower in the finals. And so I think, being able to be that automatic with it, and there's nothing quite as cool as being like, not just saying tomorrow, prelims tomorrow, I'm going to break a world record, and then doing that is pretty cool. And that on its own, I think, elevates an already awesome moment of breaking a world record. So for me, yeah, that was the best swim. It's kind of a boring answer, but I think there's enough other things around it that make it a little more
No,
exciting than
I
just, oh, it's a world record. Yeah, obvious number one.
that is the best context surrounding a world record I feel like we've seen in a while. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I think it's an easy answer. That's a swim that needs to be talked about. We're talking about it now. So yeah, I think that was obviously the best swim we saw from this meet. What was your favorite swim that you saw from Shanghai?
My favorite swim, and this is, maybe you could argue, is a favorite swim for a silly reason, but it's my personal favorite, was Reagan Smith's 100 back. Because, I mean, it was just a fast swim, right? 54.89. I also just love the fact that there is now a 3-way tie for the second
Yeah.
fastest swim in that event. And 2 of them are tied for the American record. And they happened within the span of like 18 hours, 16 hours or so.
And then
That's
they
just
happen and then they
bananas.
both happened, like, what, a month after the world record just got set?
Right, could you imagine if Bakia never broke that world record? There'd be 3-way tie for the world record if that never happened. Like, that's crazy. And that is, in addition to the fact that, seeing Regan Smith swim short course meters, she was talking about like, yeah, I haven't done this in, however many years. All my walls kind of sucked, which is like, I hear that. I'm like, is it time for stop number 2? Yeah. Is she going to go faster when especially I feel like backstroke, that probably has the highest
Mhm.
impact with your, trying to count your strokes. And so that on its own, and just the fact that tying that new American record from Gretchen Walsh, tying the second fastest swim of all time behind a very fresh world record. That's just the kind of deep pull, nerdy swim knowledge that I think is so amusing, where I look at that and go, huh, Didn't think I'd see that one today.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was a great swim, and, yes, I love that now. I read that headline and I was like, "That can't be right." Like, this is a typo from SwimSwam writers, and then I was like, "Oh, no, this is right. This is correct." 3 women have all gone 54:89, and 2 of them did it in, yeah, the same day, essentially. So that was nuts. I mean, there's a lot of great swims at this meet. My personal favorite, though, was seeing Chin Hai Yang bounce back and not only win 2 events, but, like, come from behind in both of them to win the 50 and the 100 breast, and, like, to touch out in both swims Ilya Shamanovich. Um, and I just love that he's kinda back in form. He's having a, good time swimming. Obviously, this was in his home country in Shanghai. Um, and so I think that probably bodes well for his swimming. But he had this like meteoric breaststroke rise. And then, he did not have that great of an Olympics. And I don't know what was going on there. I think there was a lot probably going on behind the scenes with him, just in terms of the pressure he was feeling and all of the attention he was getting. But I think the more fast swimming we have, the better. And it's like if we're gonna have athletes who are so dominant like that, it's like you want to see them continue to dominate. So to have him win 2 events, I really enjoyed seeing that, and I hope he continues to be a top player in those breaststroke races moving forward.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with that being on home soil as well, it'll be interesting to see that how he translates in the next 2 stops as well. That I think that's something that's really interesting. I also think about that because we also obviously saw a massive Chinese contingent here,
Mm.
and that I assume that place must have been super loud. They weren't playing. They didn't have a huge amount of like the like mics that were picking up crowd noise in there. They were you could kind
Mhm.
of tell like they were very obviously like cutting to it when they were like like basically whenever a Chinese swimmer would address them, then like you hear like it switch over to another mic that's picking that up, and it's like really loud. I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish I got to hear like whenever him or Pan would walk out
Yeah.
for their events and stuff like that. But I think it'll be very interesting to see, because I think that's what's really interesting about World Cup stops as well is, which swimmers are, oh, they're getting a little tired, or which swimmers are like, man, the more I race, the better I get. And then when you also have those kind of like geographical things, like, okay, these are swimmers on, home soil here. Now these are swimmers in their home here, and just to kind of see how that plays out. It's those things that get you through the next week to the next stop.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think it'll also be interesting to see how everyone kind of adjusts to competing in Asia for 2 weeks, because the second stop will be this later this week in Incheon, South Korea, and then the stop after that will be later the next week in Singapore. So it's all 3 stops are in Asia, and I assume all the athletes will just be staying over in Asia. And so, yeah, interesting to see how everyone adjusts to racing short course meters, adjust to racing in Asia, and like you said, see how that progresses throughout the whole circuit. So those were our surprise swims, or sorry, favorite swims. What was your surprise of the meet? Biggest
My
surprise for you?
My surprise of the meet was it did not come in prelims when Thomas Chacon tied and then won the swim off. That I expect from him. I was not expecting the outside smoke to win the 100 freestyle. That was the one swim where I saw the result. As soon as he touched one, Chacon pops up on the banner on his lane, and I just started laughing because I'm like, that is so in character for him with how close he sometimes cuts in prelims to tie, get the swim off there. He doesn't have a semifinal to pad it out, so he needs to be a little more careful in prelims compared to like a worlds or an Olympics, and then just to pull it out, got a lane, got a shot. That was pretty awesome to see.
I didn't even realize that happened. That's amazing. My biggest surprise was also in the men's 100 freestyle, but it was more that Panjan La didn't win the 100 freestyle. I think he got third. Second or third?
I thought he got second. It was very close between. It was a
I
few
remember it was
hundredths.
tight. Um, but yeah, I was a little bit surprised, and like you said, outside smoke from Thomas Chacon. But I was also surprised with the time. They were like 46 mids, I think 46.3, 46.4, 46.5, somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
Pan was second in
Okay.
46.35. Chacon won in 46.32.
Okay. So like he almost won, sure. But uh and he but 46.3, that was a little more surprising to me. Just because the he's a second and a half off of that Chalmers world record, and I know people had said like, oh, 44.8 or Chalmers world record in the 100 free short course is going to be harder than many might think, for Pan and others to chase at this World Cup stop or this World Cup circuit. But, I kind of thought there would have been a little more mojo in the water, especially with him. I know he was putting a little more emphasis on this meet just because it was a home meet in Shanghai. Um, I thought he was going to be a little faster, like at least 45 something. So that was surprising to me, and not downing him or anything, but I thought we were going to see a little more pop from him.
That was definitely a surprise to me. Like after I got over the initial shock, I was like, oh, I thought it was gonna be like 45.9-ish was like kind of
Mhm.
where I was thinking it might fall. He was actually when I was talking about like the general hey, it's fun to watch swimming again in World Cup and see I made a brief comment about some swimmers who are like, are they fast all the time? Are they more in season? He was actually one of the swimmers I was thinking about ahead of time where I'm like, I haven't really seen much swimming of his that wasn't at a trials or
Mhm.
a major international meet, right? It's either going to be, especially like, domestic Chinese meets can sometimes be difficult to see results for and stuff. Or even at like a world trials or an Olympic trial. Sometimes it's, I'm relying on SwimSwam articles and the source is just like meet results, Chinese media. Or, if any videos make it on there, it's just harder to search than like tier pro swim series where I can just like scroll through endlessly on Meet Mobile.
Right.
Um, and so because of that, I don't have as much of a frame of reference for what kind of swimmer is he in season. And,
Mhm.
is he, I have no idea if he's just kind of a little sluggish in season, if he's in that, in that camp, or if he's normally a, drop of the hat and just go. And it was an off swim or, not as geared towards, I mean, he's done a lot of short course swimming. So I wouldn't say he's like not as geared towards it. Um, but yeah, that's something that'll also be interesting to see how it is. Cause maybe it was just having all that pressure of that massive crowd and having such a monumental swim, or who knows, maybe it's still riding that high from that world record and was like, I'm focusing on it, but man, I am having so many people contact me for media stuff.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm like, "Oh, what's going on with Pan?" Like, it's the fall after he just had a massive Olympic Games, but yeah, again, I was a little surprised because I thought he might be a little faster and the event itself might be a little bit faster. I'm gonna bring the comments in here, because we have one who is, showing their surprise, and that is Laura Latinen, who from Finland. Sal Ming is shouting out Laura Latinen. She had an incredible meet. I've never heard of Laura Latinen. I hope I'm saying that right. She got third in the tuner fly, 203.1. I believe that was a finish record. And then she blasts a 55.5 in the 100 fly, only one of two women who was under 56, and wins the event. And again, I've never heard of this swimmer. Like she had best times in both events, phenomenal meet. Um, Go Laura. That was also surprising, and so I'm excited to see what she has for the rest of the circuit as well.
Yeah, it's always nice. That's the nice thing about in-season swims, right? Is that you can see some people that you don't normally get exposure to
Mm.
um, show up and, either whether they're making an appearance in a final or if they are winning a final in a fast time.
And I mean, this is the cool thing about having a strong platform for short course swimming as well is that, yeah, you get athletes who you wouldn't normally see just in the long course pool. We saw this happen in ISL where there would be budding stars who would just, break out, and whether it was from the team environment or from the short course platform, you would get introduced to new athletes. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see how she progresses, and maybe if we see some other standout athletes who we've never heard of before in Korea and Singapore as well. All right, so I'd say that's I'd say that's a pretty thorough analysis of this first stop in Shanghai, and we'll do a couple synchro swims related to this as well. We had another pretty crazy short course meters meet, but this one was a college dual meet, which we don't normally see swam in short course meters. It was the Virginia-Florida dual, which is always a great meet. This year it was in Charlottesville, Virginia. Uh, the top story was obviously Gretchen Walsh. She shattered the 100 IM world record, which was Katinka Hozu's from 2017. So it's 7-year-old world record, and she broke it by over half a second. She also broke 3 American records in the 50 back, 100 back, and 50 free. So that's just on its own island, as we've kind of become accustomed to seeing from Gretchen Walsh. But other than Gretchen, what impressed you about this dual meet?
I do want to very briefly about Gretchen. One
Yeah.
thing with all of the records is this is something I was thinking about after the fact is that might sound like a weird comparison, but we always talk about Katie Ledecky and how she is like suffering from her own success just because the insane things she doesn't stand out as much because oh yeah, you take it for granted. I feel like this was like a weird twist on that, where it wasn't necessarily because we take fast swims for granted from Gretchen Walsh. It was because she did so many so fast. She did 3 of those records in an hour. None of some of them after the fact I was looking at the results. So wait, how did I didn't fully comprehend it. I just the one that started for me was the 50 free 23-1. That's crazy.
Which the world record is 22.9. There's only one woman who's ever broken 23. So yeah.
Yeah, that was half a second off of the American record before that. Or, I talked about before with Regan Smith, the fact that this also tied the second fastest 100 backswim in history. And it was just like man, she missed the world record.
Yeah.
Or more accurately is that everyone looked at the results after the meet was done and saw Gretchen Walsh world record and then ignored the 3 swims before that, which fair enough. That I think is crazy.
It was also great that her teammate Kate Douglas was swimming in Shanghai that morning in the United States, broke the American record in the 100 IM, throws down one of the fastest times in history, 56.99, and then hours later Gretchen Walsh goes over a full second faster. It's just like, wait, what?
It was I believe it was around 3:30 a.m. Shanghai time when that IM swim took place. I looked at the time and did the math. I was like, yeah, so she was hopefully firmly asleep when that happened. So first thing in the morning, Gretchen Walsh world record.
Yeah, that'll keep you humble, I suppose.
But aside from that swim, I was thoroughly impressed by this was the first swimmer I actually went to look at what they did after I realized that, oh wait, the only results I looked at from this meet was Gretchen Walsh because those were all the headlines. Right. Josh Liendo is that he was moving, particularly in those sprint freestyles. So he was a 20.88 in the individual 50 free, and then led off a relay in a 46.35, which as we kind of just touched on with going over the 100 free results, wasn't that what
that's what Pan
went? Yeah. And then I believe that would have won the because Dylan Carter won in a 21.06 at the World Cup. And so that I couldn't think of a better comparison than what was going on in the other high level short course meter swimming there. So if you're winning one event and tying for silver in another one, and then 49.3 in the 100 fly, which I believe would have been, I want to say third. I don't remember. I know it would have been behind Noe, and then let's say would have been third. Niels Castagna would have just gotten them. But those were very solid performances there, especially, just given the fact that he, who knows what maybe he would have done if it was with those other higher level of competition rather than an NCAA dual meet, a little bit deeper of a field. If he would have been faster, maybe would have been right with the pack, who knows? But that was something that really stood out to me. And I think he, from what I gleaned, seemed like some of the highest placings from, if you took the time and transplanted over to the World Cup. Claire Curzon's 100 fly was also pretty quick.
Yeah.
She was a 55.68.
Yeah. Wouldn't have beat
Nope.
Miss Finland, but would have gotten a close second. Yeah, and that's what I noticed the most. It was Virginia's newcomers. Claire Curzon had some excellent swims. Anna Moish won the 100 freestyle. Leah Hayes. Freshman Leah Hayes had some great swims in the tuner free, tuner breast, and tuner IM as well. And so it's crazy to me how Virginia can lose X amount of talent every year and they are able to retool and just like keep moving forward. I mean, I don't think it's any doubt that if all goes well, they will win their 5th consecutive NCAA title this year, which will be a record for most consecutive titles by a program. And the Virginia women look incredible. They look as dominant as ever. And so that it really stood out to me that they have some newcomers that are going to make big differences this year, and aren't just going to, be swimming for a point here or there, but like they're going to be in NCAA finals. They're going to be making significant contributions. Some of them will probably be on relays. And so they're just picking up where they left off.
It's like nothing ever changed. They're just going to just keep.
Yeah, they're just going to keep on keeping on. We got a commenter, Alfonso, saying Gretchen is an underwater merchant. Couldn't medal in the 50 and 100 free at the Olympics and long course. Well, I just want to respond to that briefly. She won a silver medal at the Olympics in the 100 fly. So I think it's convenient that you're discounting that. But also she was 4th in the 50 freestyle by 100th of a second. Like she didn't medal in that, but like she could. I think it's very obvious to see the potential is there. Gretchen is sensational in short course, but I think the argument has become pretty weak now that she's not a long course swimmer, because she broke a world record in long course and she made the Olympics in 3 events. Like, come on.
She's very definitely better in short course, but
I think that's an easy argument to make.
But she's not, I mean, she's a world record holder in the 100 fly.
Yeah, she's not a slouch. She has proven herself long course, I think, very, very firmly. So I don't buy into that argument anymore. But anywho, on that note, let's end our today's breakdown with some good old fashioned sink or swims. All right, first up today on sink or swim. Speaking of dual meets in short course meters, we don't see it often, and honestly, I wish we would. Sink or swim. Should there be more NCAA dual meets in short course meters?
I am going to swim this just because it was very exciting to see some, something different, especially when you can time it out with a World Cup happening. I think if you're going to plan out doing a dual meet in short course meters, if I was planning that as, a coach figuring out that schedule, I would look and see, are there any, if there's a World Cup stop happening or any other high caliber high caliber short course meters racing, like that's relatively close by. Obviously, this time it's basically at the same time. The only thing stopping it from being literally at the same time is, time zones. Is
Yeah.
all right, everyone, wake up at 5 in the morning. We're diving in.
We're
And
dueling.
I think, it's one of those things that is for the hardcorest of hardcore fans that are going to make those comparisons, right? And are going to pay attention to both sides, in both meets and compare. I think it makes it really exciting. And I think it's also, for the athletes, it's probably a benefit, one, to get used to that format if you plan on ever racing in the future, or also just something different right in the middle of the season. Hey, you're getting tired of, let's say you are trying to progress through the season in one event, trying to work on something, and you're just like stuck at a wall. Like imagine we're in, not right before mid-season or maybe like right after, something like that. And you're just like, man, I can't break, insert barrier here in my 100 fly. Oh, I can do something where I can throw out that number that I'm looking for, and I can just focus on racing. And then maybe that can bring you through like that. Outside, I'm trying to think about benefits for the swimmers outside of the highest of level swimming that is going to be comparable to a World Cup. Because yeah, if you're not at a super powerhouse program like Virginia women, or like Josh Leando with Florida, that might not be the most important to time it out with a World Cup stop. That is very specific to this kind of meet. But in general, I think it's something different, something exciting to see. And who knows if, that contingent of fans that thinks that short course yards is the silliest thing ever, they might pay attention to this meet, if nothing else.
Get college swimming on the map. No, absolutely. Yeah. I'm swimming this 100%. Like I said, I was just thinking about what you mentioned before you mentioned it, which is what are the benefits of this for swimmers who aren't going to be competing at a World Cup or on a world stage? One, you go best times. Like, who doesn't love going best times, right? I mean, most of most swimmers in America, period, have not raced in short course meters. If they have, it was like once when they were 12, or something like that. Like it's one meet, and so if you swim a few events and at short course meters, like you're probably going to go best times. But as you said, you can focus on a race strategy. You can just focus on other things aside from, oh, how does this race compare to this race last year or this race last meet? Like it's just kind of you can get outside your own head, and I think that's a good thing for a lot of athletes. It's like have one short course meters meet per season. You know, again, switch it up, do something new. I know not every pool can do this, but I think a lot of pools around the country now have the capabilities to do this. And it's just more data points, it's more fun, and it gets more international eyes on college swimming. So prospective athletes who do not live in America, who might want to swim in America, they can actually relate to the times that are being swum, and that might get them a little more interested. It might give them a higher sense of familiarity. But yeah, I'm all for it, because then not only do we get to see the best of the best actually do short course meters like we did this time and get a world record and multiple American records, but we also just get to see other swimmers do something different for a change. And I'm sure for them, that's going to be a fun experience. All right. Next up. Okay, this is an over under. In Incheon, South Korea, at the World Cup stop number 2 later this week, the line is 0.5 for world records we will see in Incheon. Over or under? We saw one in Shanghai. Over under 0.5 world records in Incheon.
I'm going to take the over. Just one. I believe what you've been accused of was a toxic optimism.
That's correct.
I'm never going to go no world records, because I don't know if I have it in my heart to do that. But mainly because I feel like there is a lot of potential in a lot of events for if at least one of them hits, then you hit the over, right? I mentioned earlier Reagan Smith saying that she is not super used to to short course meters. If she maybe is able to clean up some turn. I think she said in I think it's her final like post race interview after the 200 back, I believe was the last event. She made a comment. She's like, I did not hit a single wall correctly this entire meet. Something to that effect, something with that energy behind it. And it, if you can clean those up in 100 back when you're only 3/10 off of that world record, I mean, you got enough walls for, if you did a 10th of the wall, you got the world record. Things like that. If Kate Douglas is able to maybe keep improving in that 200 breaststroke and challenge that mark or anything like that. And just I don't think, based on how we've seen, I don't know if we should be throwing world record predictions at Marchand quite yet until he, I think short course worlds is the much better time for that, because he's only been back in training for like a month. But with that said,
and
he's at a caliber of swimmer where you can never entirely write it out. I mean, he's set an NCAA record in a dual meet before.
Yeah,
that is a thing that he's done. And if he is at such an early stage and getting back into his training, as you kind of go through by the third, in Singapore, not super relevant to this particular sink or swim, but just kind of illustrating the full arc we might see from him. He might be getting better as series goes on, as he's been back in the groove of racing. It could have been 50%, only been back in the water for a month, 50% first race since the Olympics. Got to knock some cobwebs off first, things like that. And just, I feel like there is enough swimmers who have some reasonable path to a world record that there's one of them's got to hit. And also, we're now reigning world record holder, Ponti. Is he doing all 3 stops?
I was just thinking that. I'm actually not sure.
That's why I didn't lead with it.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure. But if he is, he went the world record, then a 1/100 slower. So if he flips the math and goes 1/100 faster, new world record.
So I am going to prove the haters wrong
and be pessimistic
and sink it. And here's why. It was the first. Okay, Noe Ponti is slated to compete in Incheon, so there's that. He will be there, and I am with you in the fact that there's a lot of potential, right? KD, Reagan, Leon, Ponti, a lot of excitement. But I think this is basically just for argument's sake. I think there will be a slight slump on this second stop from some athletes. Ponti, I think he will get close to his times if he swims those events again. But I think it was the first stop. You get excited. You have some good swims. I think he'll be maybe just off of those because he went 2 best times in the 50 and 100 fly. I don't think he's going to go best times again.
He actually went best times in all 4 of his events in the 100 and 200 IM as well. He was 4 for 4. I know, he's crazy.
So it's like he had a really good meet. And I'm not saying he won't have another good meet, but I'm not seeing a best time from him. I think other athletes will kind of continue to progress and get an inch closer to world records maybe, but I think Incheon will be a great meet, but I'm going under 0.5 world records. I'm saying no world records in Incheon. But then I think Singapore has a better shot of us seeing world records again, because you will have those athletes who are getting better. And at the end of the stop, I think we might see a couple fireworks, but I'm saying there will be a little slump at this meet.
Which with a three stop series would actually make some sense, because you think you have the excitement from the first one for first back swing, and you kind of go down in the middle, and then you get that little kick towards the end with it, where you're hearing the bell lap at that point and you're ready to go home. You haven't slept in your own bed for a month at that point, and you're just ready. The faster you swim, the faster you can go home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm pulling a commenter in, chess grandmaster. I wonder if you're actually a chess grandmaster. We forgot to mention Tang Qianting, who is very close to world records in both the 50 and 100 breast as well. That's another potential one that
I knew I was missing someone. It was her.
I don't think we don't mean to be biased towards American and towards Western athletes. We just don't get to see Eastern athletes compete as much, so they're on our radar less, but you're completely correct. Tang Qianting has a good shot at breaking a world record in both breaststrokes, and I think she will over the course of this series. But because of what I answered, I'm going to say she does it in Singapore.
I was 100% when she was swimming those races. I totally thought she was going to get the world record because I was at the time before Ponti broke the 50 fly world record. I was thinking about the last breakdown where we both swam world records happening at some point in I don't remember if it was for the first stop or just in general.
Yeah.
And this was after Walsh's world record. I was like, we can't have the only world record this weekend be it not the meet we said it would happen. And I was like, she's gonna save us. And then Ponti got the job done. But that was, I totally thought, like, during the water, like I was watching the world record line. I'm like, come on. She's got So I would love to see a WR next to her next to her next swims at the next stop, and not in Singapore.
We shall see. And last, sink or swim, sticking with the World Cup in Shanghai. So as we mentioned before, Leon Marchand and Kate Douglas are your current curled WUP leaders, World Cup leaders. After the first stop, are you swimming that Leon and Kate? This is a double or nothing sink or swim. Will win the World Cup crown by the end of the series.
I am going to sink it because I think it's pretty more favorable that Leon gets it. I think that Regan Smith is going to overtake Kate Douglas at some point in there, just because I could see, in theory, if Kate Douglas maybe drops an event or two. She sounded it sounded like a very good idea to her dropping that 200 IM after that 200 IM, because she looked very tired, and she basically said, I don't know if I'm going to swim it again. And then also, I guess I got to pull off the hat trick of mentioning it and say that, if Regan Smith keeps improving, then that's going to bump up the other side of her points, which and also the main reason is that if she doesn't have Kaylee McEwen as a barrier, then that is going to help her out a lot, because she doesn't need to, she would have had another win under her belt if it wasn't for getting second in the 50 back.
Yeah, no, I was thinking it as you said it. I think I'm going to sink it as well. Because it's such I think this is really hard, because Kate and Regan are both such good in-season swimmers that either of them could pop a world record or like go a really, really ridiculous time. And especially when we've got two more stops, it's like they've both got a lot of opportunities to have really good swims, and they probably will. But I will say I think Reagan's events are a little less competitive than Kate's now that Kaylee is gone. So I will agree with you on that I will sink this as well. I think Leon will win. I think he's kind of got it in the bag. Although there's some good competition on the men's side, but I think Regan has a great shot to win, and she's pretty far behind. But Siobhan Howie is also really, really good at in-season swimming, really good at short course swimming. She might be able to creep up there if Regan and Kate, have an off swim.
Rising breaststroker, Siobhan Howie.
Seriously, like she is good. So I think it's less likely that Kate will maintain the crown. And it's so close at this point that I will sink as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like you mentioned at the very start, it's 0.1 between them right now. That's crazy.
It's really tight. So yeah, I think they've both got great shots at this point. So, all right, that is our breakdown for the day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And like I said, we will be back later this week to talk college swimming, but we wanted to cater to the international audience and the short course meters fans out there. And so we did that today. We'll see you next week. And